Greetings, Star Wars fans. My name is John Edward Lee, and I'm here with another universe-expanding books and toys. I did a series of 90s comics and books, and now I need to start a new series. We covered pretty much everything we can there, so I decided to go with one of my favorite genres, not just from Star Wars, but in general, and that's cartoons. I'm a big fan of animation. Disney stuff, Looney Tunes stuff, anime, stop motion things like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I'm all into it. And the 90s was a great era, my favorite, but the 80s offered a lot of great animated series and animated Star Wars things to sort of entice people after the films came out. They made comics and cartoons up until 86, 87, and then there was pretty much dark time until like 1990. I know that's only 3 years, but when you're a kid, that's like 20 years. It was rough. But we got things besides the movies, as great as that original trilogy is. And one of the first things that we got was the most infamous holiday special. If you've never seen it, the first time I showed it to someone, she actually vomited. That's how like traumatic it was. It is, you know. And if you're gonna watch it, watch the Riff Tracks version with the guys from Mystery Science Theater like riffing on it the whole time. That's the way to get through that. I actually really enjoy the holiday special, but not because it's good, not because it adds anything, but for one reason. Animated Boba Fett. There he is. Right there, you can see he's got the bident that the Mandalorian uses in the first season, and there's an image of him from that holiday special. It's 8 minutes long, maybe, but it's pretty cool. It very much looks like 70s cartoons. For those interested in it, of course, it's on Disney Plus, as is the Droids and Ewoks cartoons. If you haven't figured out, that's what I'm going to talk about as well. Very, very worth it. It looks very, very 70s, which I like. 70s animation has a very surrealistic, Yellow Submarine feeling to it. Although I think that might have not have been the 70s, that might have been earlier, but that's what I think of when I think of like fringe animation, and it very much was so. One of the things that I was really happy to latch onto and get in the 90s were these reproductions of Boba Fett and C-3PO and R2-D2. This is not from Droids or the animated spot from the holiday special. They're reproductions that I think I ordered them from a mail-in insert that came with the Star Wars trilogy in the 90s. Anyways, I kept on to them. I love cartoons, and that's my lifeblood as far as this stuff goes. I really, really enjoy it. I mean, the comic books are really my lifeblood, but cartoons in general, just the old cartoon masters from like the 20s and 30s used to refer to cartoons as wish fulfillment. And although we can get that with movies now because of CGI and excellent puppetry, a lot of it led the way by George Lucas itself. Animation was an easier, more direct way to do that, and you can really do anything with animation. You're not limited to what technology has. It's a pen and celluloid and repeating that process. That's my favorite thing about animation, is it's mostly hand drawn, not so much these days, but back in these days, absolutely, people were drawing them by hand, 40 frames per second, which is a lot of cells. But before we get any further, I want to talk about the holiday special, because it was about where the Wookiee Life Day holiday, which is something that people celebrate now. I was so happy that this past November, everywhere, people were saying, Happy Life Day, Happy Life Day. One of the reasons for that is Life Day's had a big moment in the past couple years. In the first episode of The Mandalorian, a character who Horatio Sands plays with Blue, with the gills, I can never remember his name, he mentions, I guess I'm going to miss Life Day. And people were like, who didn't know what it was like, what's that? And looked into it. And Life Day's had a resurgence. Earlier on this year, they brought out the Life Day Treasury, which is short stories about the Wookiee holiday, which the holiday special revolved around. Last week, Marvel brought out a Life Day anthology of stories as well. It was just a one-shot. You can see Chewie and Han there. And this was a great issue because it was basically about all of Han's efforts over the years to make sure Chewie has a nice Life Day. What a lovely story that is. Now, that's getting a little bit further away from the animation. So we're talking about the origin of Boba Fett, not the prototype Boba Fett who showed up in video before the animation, but the animated Boba Fett. One of the reasons that it took me a while to get this video out is Hasbro has released 3 droids figures, including Boba Fett, as well for vintage collection, and also a 6-inch version of Boba Fett. I was hoping they'd show up by now. I actually held off a little bit to see if they would come in, but they have not. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Now, before I get into all the books and comics I want to show you, really it's just comics, let's go over some of the things that I have behind me. This is a reproduction of the original Boba Fett action figure done by Gentle Giant, obviously much bigger, with the collectible coin. I know it's hard to see with the glare there. There's also C-3PO one in that yellow and blue and sort of brownish gold that he had in the cartoon series. You can see it right there. I don't have the R2 for this. These go for a lot of money. It was enough to get these two. One day I'll get R2. But this is exactly what the vintage collection will look like, except on a smaller scale, like the original Droids cartoon figures. I don't have any of those original Droids cartoon figures because they are extremely hard to find, very hard to get. When I was a kid, I found the Droids cartoon to be a little boring and went much more into the Ewoks, but they all ended up in the clearance bin because the toy lines weren't as popular as they thought they were, and now I think the C-3PO is worth well over $1,000. So it was actually, in the long run, very successful. Of course, I got this giant R2 here. Rey doesn't belong here right now. She's basically a placeholder for those figures that are coming. I like this Rey, just side point because I made a yellow lightsaber for her, and there she is looking at it. By the way, Poster Putty Funtac, that is your friend when displaying figures. You don't need a stand, you just need a little putty under their feet. They do just fine. Pro tip. All right, so obviously we're talking about Ewoks and the Droids cartoon. If you know who this guy is, you already know the Droids cartoon very well. This is Umwak, the Dulak Shaman. He is my favorite Star Wars figure of them all. My absolute favorite. I had him as a kid. I loved him. I loved Ewoks because if you're 5, 6 years old when the Ewoks were huge with the TV movies and the cartoon series, that was a huge thing for anyone that age. If anyone's 20, Jar Jar is probably your version of the Ewoks because it's a character that was specifically aimed at you and you grew up with them. That's the same way it is for me and Ewoks. More so than droids, as much as I do love droids. So let's focus on some of the things they brought out around that. Of course, droids and Ewoks were popular before the cartoon. The Marvel series definitely focused on stuff like the Wookiee World, I think is the name of this issue. This may have Lumpy in it from the holiday special. I can't remember. He is in an issue. I just can't ever remember what it is. And then, of course, this is one of my favorite covers. That Ewok there with his spear, standing on his Stormtrooper helmet. I don't know why that's so wide. I love the surrealism, and I like that he looks more like a bear. Less like an Ewok, more like a bear. I don't think their eyes get that small. They have big eyes. But that's a great cover. Very fun. It shows you how whimsical and dangerous Ewoks are. Of course, they also made a comic pack of that with a few of the colorful Ewoks from that issue. I can't even say their names, so I'm just going to show you them right there. They're also written on the side. But it's got that issue. I just think it's really great. This is a Walmart exclusive. And of course, at this point, Dark Horse had the rights, even though that original comic book was Marvel. Not a lot of books. In fact, no books for Ewoks and Droids, which is a shame. I would gladly welcome those. The only thing book-wise I have even close is this read-along Ewok adventure book, which is actually pretty cool. I do really like the Ewok movies. But that's about it. Now, what we did get is a bunch of comics. And one of the greatest comics of my childhood was the Ewoks comic. That's issue number 1. Star Comics was sort of a Marvel spin-off like Vertigo is from DC, where they basically did Bullwinkle and Rocky Heathcliff, Rainbow Bright comics, things that were for younger kids. Now, this is one I got. It's really good condition a couple years ago. I have my original one from when I was 5 or 6. It is beat to heck, but I love it. I carried it around with me everywhere. One of my favorites. Now, of course, the Ewoks cartoon was great. It had 2 seasons. This comic book series, which was more than a year, it was about a year and 2 months for this series, took a life of its own. Borrowing from, of course, the cartoon, because there's that guy from the cartoon, Princess Nisa. Wicket's colors are all different. He's got a yellow tunic in this, as opposed to tan in the first season, green in the second season. But a lot of great episodes or issue covers. Like, they always look so terrified, those poor Ewoks. Every time in every cover, it's just Wicket going, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble." Look, I mean, he's just always in trouble. It just goes on like that. Every issue is just him in danger. I mean, up until issue 10, which is a great issue because it's got a bunch of other Marvel characters, and that's just a really good one. One of my favorite things about, hey, there's a Duloc. I don't know why they don't get more cover time in this comic book, but they're there. One of my favorite issues is the very last one, issue 14, because when I bought it, some 80s loving kid had to let the world know that he loves or she loves Rambo. I love Rambo, written twice in the barcode. Devalues the comic, but I don't care. I'm not even a fan of Rambo. I just like that someone had to put on paper how much they loved Rambo. I'm going to go back and forth between Droids and Ewoks because they did come out at the same time. Droids had 1 season and the special. Ewoks had 2 seasons, so it lasted a little bit longer. Although the first season of Ewoks, which had episodes mostly written by Paul Dini, who wrote episodes of He-Man and co-created Batman the Animated Series, which is arguably the best action cartoon of all times. More so than these Star Wars cartoons. Maybe not more so than Clone Wars, Bad Batch, Rebels. Those are really exceptional. And I hate to admit that they're better than Droids and Ewoks, but they're aimed at an older audience. They're a little bit more deep. Droids had a comic book series as well. And of course, it takes a life on its own. R2's got red on him. They just changed the colors up. There's another version. It's almost like a different droid, but it's definitely R2. One of the cool things about this series is they did a crossover with the Ewoks, which is great because they did not do that on the cartoon. And they actually did Droids, the cartoon version of the Star Wars saga, from their perspective. And there you see Darth Vader looking at those droids as if to say, hey, I used to fly with that one. Hey, I created that one. No, he didn't do that back then. That's new canon. And then, of course, goes right up to the end of Return of the Jedi. I assume. I've actually not read this one. I assume that could be Obi-Wan. I'm not sure. Maybe this is just the first movie. I don't know why. For whatever reason, I've never been too excited about the idea of the animated version of the original movie. I've just never read it. I actually collected these only a couple years ago. I didn't have them before. Now, Dark Horse, when they started out in the early 90s, a few years into it, and I've talked about this before, they did a Droids series, which very much feels like the animated series continuation. It's very cartoony. Although very stylistic. I really love the covers in this. There's a really cool hut. This is the first time you ever saw a hut that did not look like Jabba the Hutt, and now it's commonplace for them to look different. And of course, again, it's very, very, very cartoony at times. They did 2 series for this. I think they were 6 issues apiece. That's about it. They did a 1-shot as well, but that's about it. It's a great series and very fun. Ewoks don't show up much in comic books, but right before Disney bought Star Wars, Dark Horse put out this digest Ewoks. This is a great, great comic. It combines the movie as well as the 2 movies as well as the animated series. There is the Night Sister from the second movie. I believe the Gorax from the first movie there. Of course, Dulocs with blasters, pretty cool. One of my favorite things about this, because it's a combination of the both, most of the characters are pretty much the same, except for Tebow. This is not the Tebow from the cartoon series, this is the Tebow from the movie. They made him a little bit more, for lack of a better phrase, badass, and kept that version as opposed to the lovable, but almost gentle Tebow from the cartoon series. That's it as far as old canon. New canon, very little about Ewoks and a lot's about droids, but not a droid series. There was a Droids 1-shot, though, about C-3PO getting his red arm. This is it though. Vader's Castle. This is by IDW, not Marvel. It's more like Star Comics. They're not the same company like Star and Marvel were, but IDW does the more family friendly. Of course, every Halloween they do Vader's Castle, which is a kind of a spoof of Tales from the Crypt. But there you see, they have recanonized the Gorax as well as the Ewoks. And most importantly to me, I should have had this prepared so I can go right to it. Oh, I'm not going to find it easily. Everything's difficult. No, I'm just joking. Just complaining for the sake of complaining. There they are. Dulocs, recanonized in this issue. Please, please, Lucasfilm, bring me more Dulocs. I love Dulocs. I love Dulocs more than I love Ewoks. I just really like the Dulocs. I normally don't go for graphic novels, but I got this at a good price at Ollie's, which is a discount store here in the US. It's the Droids and Ewoks series, but I don't have to worry about ruining my issues. Of course, graphic novels, the one plus thing about them is that the colors, it just looks better than the printed newspaper look in the individual issues. But I just prefer individual issues for one specific reason, and that's for advertisements. Let's see if I can find a good one real quick. Good old advertisement, because that is my bread and butter when it comes. That's why I do not collect graphic novels, but there's one for Popples. Also had a Star comic as well. Man, I love old ads. Look, there's was it Tootsie Pop? No. It's some sort of lollipop. But there's Gumby and Pokey. People don't even know who Gumby and Pokey is. The only time I ever see Gumby and Pokey merchandise is when it's like a dog toy. And I hate the idea of dogs chewing up those poor clay little boys and ponies. All right, so as far as Ewoks figures, I really don't have too much because they didn't bring out too much. I have the ones from the film, not even all of them, like 5 of the 8 of the original film. I do have this guy from the cartoon series, and if you're like, that's not it, that's because when I was 14, I decided to repaint this figure to look more like the season 2 with the green cloak than the season 1 look. Loose is easily a $100 figure. No value as far as this goes with me repainting it. His ear broke years ago, and I used some like putty to like sort of replace it. So not worth a lot, except it's worth a lot to me. I lost this after my mom passed away. I had her end table, which had like a faulty leg, and it fell over one day and busted open. And this little guy rolled out of it. My mom had kept this for me. She decided it was important enough that she kept it with her things, and I was able to discover it. It was actually quite magical. Now, they brought out a bunch of them. Of course, the same deal. They're very expensive. I did get some 3D printed, and I still have to paint them, versions of some of the other characters, which these are really cool. Milani, Nisa, no, I'm sorry, this is Nisa. That's Latara. Nisa and the original Tebow with his nice little like Smurf hat, which I always liked. I gotta paint those. I really, really love those. I would love for Hasbro to just start making those figures again. So, as far as connections to the cartoon series and figures, newer figures, is the Vintage Collection did a Wicket. But you'll notice that he also comes with that green cloak. He's got the, tan one that you see in the movie, but there's the green cloak. So he can be like the version of him in the second season of the cartoon. He's got that little like tooth or whatever that is that's on his like spirit band that he's spending the whole second season trying to get tokens for it. This is my favorite action figure of all times. And when people talk about Star Wars grails, don't take that phrase lightly. A grail is something that you should be like, I can't believe I found this. I can't believe I have this. This is it. There he is, Umwak, the Duloc Shaman. This is from, let's see, 1990, I'm going to say 1996. 1995 it says. And there's the list of the other figures that they released in the first line. Only 2 Ewoks, and the rest were Dulocs. But this is great. I mean, there's no yellowing. It's got the coin, his necklace, can dangle in there. I had this figure. It was my favorite figure as a child. I foolishly, as a teenager, decided to hang it from my rear view mirror. One day when just talking with my sister, an elaborate gesture knocked him out. And because he'd been sitting in the sun hanging from rope, he shattered into pieces. I cannot tell you how crestfallen I was. But because Celebration was canceled the summer before last, I had a little extra cash. I splurged to get myself my favorite Duloc. I'm a big fan of animation, and so I had to go track down some of the original cell animation from the cartoon. And of course, there's got the top cell with the characters, a bottom cell for background characters, and then the painting, and then of course the frame on top of that. As cool as that is, and I need to get one with Wicket on it because he's the main character. This one is, of course, my favorite. There he is yet again, Umwak, the Duloc Shaman, season 1. I love that these cartoons are on Disney Plus. It was really cool to watch that episode and see the animation cell that I owned. I don't think I've gotten to the second one yet because I still have a couple more episodes to go, but that was in the first season. And to see him with his nephew there on a mission, looking mischievous, man, I love that guy. I really, really, really like the Duloc Shaman. I could talk about him all day. I could do one of these just about him. In fact, I've gone over time than I normally would because this is where I got my start as a Star Wars fan. I didn't really fully comprehend the movies as a small child. I think I'd only seen Return of the Jedi up until I was about 7 years old and finally saw Return of the Jedi. But this stuff is where Star Wars began for me. The Droids cartoon, the Ewoks cartoon. I was a little too young for that. I mean, I wasn't born when the holiday special came out, so I didn't see that till I was a full adult. That's why I suggest the Riff Tracks version. Also, I love ads. That Riff Track version has the original commercials added in, which is a nice little bonus to see some old vintage commercials. I love vintage ads. What can I say? Those two cells did come with certificates of authenticity. I don't know why there's different sizes, but I do have them. These became available to the public with Star Wars Insider one year. When you got a subscription, you actually got one of the animations. That was random one. Sometimes people just got an Ewok arm. I don't know where it is. I got Wicket with no nose because apparently he was like smelling and his nose was moving with the cell on top of it. But I needed to get these because they're actually the full characters. And of course, my hero, Umwak, the Duloc Shaman. And you hear that clacking around, my dog's walking around. I used to dream of naming a dog Duloc, but no, I haven't done that yet. One day I'll have that dog and I'll name him Duloc. Again, my name is John Edward Lee. This has been a Universe Expanding Books and Toys. You should expect to see a continuation of this series. If you're doing your math, as far as animated series, the Tartakovsky series is next. And that's one of my favorites as well. So I will be back to do that. In the meantime, happy Life Day. Enjoy the holidays. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, no matter how you celebrate. Star Wars fans, you are my family. My name is John Edward Lee. This has been a Universe Expanding Books and Toys. And remember that the Force will be with you, always.